Hey everyone, I'm a little late as usual, but welcome. I'm going to be doing a live drawing session today, and I'd love it if you joined in just to get kind of a behind the scenes sneak peek into my process. Let me know if you have any questions because I love answering them. And I don't think I'm going to be having any music in the background because the last time that I tried to do that, YouTube blocked my video on copyright restriction grounds or something. So that's a shame, but you know, it'll be you and me and pencils and pens and hopefully fun stuff. So I'm gonna take a few minutes just to set up and actually share the link to the live drawing session on Patreon because, as you know, or maybe you don't, all these live drawing sessions are part of my Patreon posts. So Patreon is kind of like a Kickstarter, but for creators who, like me, create on an ongoing basis. And so the idea is kind of that content creators like myself, but it could be somebody else who does music or who makes videos on YouTube, for example, or writes books. It's a way for them to create kind of a membership platform so that you can get behind the scenes look into creators' processes and have a kind of connection that's a bit different than what you would get on Facebook or Instagram. What I like to share a lot on Patreon is secret projects and things that I wouldn't necessarily make public. So, for example, on Patreon Lens, I kind of share the day-to-day process of things I'm working on, stuff that I maybe don't feel comfortable enough sharing on Instagram, where there's just a bunch of people who might or might not like your work, and it just feels like a nicer place to share that with people who kind of understand what you do or want to support you in a more, I guess, meaningful and particular way. So that's kind of the principle behind Patreon. And to thank people for supporting my work and just being a part of my creative journey, I like to try to give back by showing how I work on a day-to-day basis so that you can also maybe draw inspiration from it for your own creative art practice, or just even if you're curious and you just don't know what it's like or how one can go about creating different pieces of artwork. So that is kind of the summary of all that, and I'm trying to find the video on my YouTube channel. So wait, I'm going to share this with my patrons. There we go. All right, so I'm gonna, oh, hi, I don't know who you are, but welcome. Thanks for joining me. I was just explaining that I'm just about to set up because I have to share the link with my patrons on Patreon, and I haven't gotten around to that yet. So I'm going to be doing that, and then I'll be moving forward with the drawing session. And like always, I love answering questions. I love knowing where you're from if you're watching this. And this right here is the setup for what I'm going to be using while I'm drawing. So, live stream. It's a little annoying because it's kind of like I need to launch the live video before getting access to the link, which I then need to share on Patreon and Facebook and Instagram. So it's kind of like a two-step process where I need to, yeah. It would just be nice if I could get the link before I go live, and then you wouldn't have to actually see me set this up, which is kind of boring. So I apologize for that. And I will also be looking at the chat stream, so I'll be able to see if you have any questions in particular. Who knows, maybe this is one of my patrons. Are you one of my patrons? If you are, yay, thank you. And if you're not, doesn't matter, yay for being here. Okay. So. And as I was explaining earlier, it's a little annoying because I can't put music on, because if I put, last time I used Spotify, YouTube blocked my videos so people couldn't rewatch it after, like after I was done with the live session. So that's a little annoying. Oh, shoot. I don't want this scheduled. All right, I think I'm close. Yes. All right. So, last step, Instagram and Facebook. And so if in the meantime, if you're bored of just staring at my silent face, you can check out what I do on Instagram, instagram.com, and Instagram. Those are my two go-tos. Because they're, I guess, more visual too, right? So that makes it easier. So... almost there. So shared on Twitter, now on Facebook. And if you have any questions, let me know. I'd love to answer them. Facebook. Oh, darn. Because I'm half with you and half on this, I'm making mistakes. So I just posted it to my personal Facebook page, Facebook profile instead of my page. I guess, why not? All right. I think it should be good. I'm gonna check. I don't know if you hear the fan, but it's because it's like a cajillion degrees outside. So usually I like to actually have the door open so that we kind of get the street sounds. But today it's just too darn hot, so the door is gonna be closed and it's just gonna be me and the fan. All right. Instagram is the last thing. I'm actually wondering how can I do that on the desktop computer. I feel like I've done it before, but I don't quite remember. So if you have any clues, let me know. Maybe it's in accounts. Nope, it's not that. Maybe I can just leave it like I did. Let's see. So I'm curious how you found me. Oh, hey, there are 2 more people here. Hi. I haven't started yet, but I'm going to soon. So I'm curious to know where you're from, if you're from the continent that I'm in, well, Europe, or from some other place. Oh, hi, Tiona. Nice to see you again. It's awesome. Every time I do one of these live drawing sessions, you check in, so that's fun. How have you been? I hope you've been creative, and I'm guessing it's not insanely warm where you are, or maybe not as warm as where it is here in the south of France. We're also experiencing a heat wave, so that doesn't help. All right. Do you happen to remember or know? Ooh, St. Paul, Minnesota. Nice. Awesome. Hi, Matthew. I've never actually been to Minnesota, but I have a few really good friends who live there, so I have to get down there someday. I'm curious to know, like, did you just find me on YouTube? Yeah, I remember Georgia. Tiona, I remember that. Yeah, Matthew, I'm just curious, like, did you find it just by chance? Or, I don't know, through Instagram or something like that? Yep. I do know that. Darn it, I really can't find how to modify the link on Instagram with my desktop computer. If you have any ideas, I'd love to take them. I guess I'll just let people figure it out. I have my Patreon, and then they have to go into posts, which is kind of annoying, and blah, blah, blah. Well, I thought I'd figured it out last time, and it's like, you know, you do something once, and then you're like, oh yeah, I know how to do this, and then you just forget. That's how it feels right now. All right. You guys have been waiting long enough, so I'm going to start drawing. And I can kind of show you what I was working on yesterday. And so if you're part of Patreon, you might have seen a snippet of that on Patreon Lens. And if you're not familiar with what Patreon Lens is, it's kind of like Instagram stories where I can kind of like capture little clips on a day-to-day basis, and they appear for 24 hours and then they disappear. So it's a super fun format, and what I really like to do actually on Patreon is also sometimes I'll share like little quotes of books that I'm reading or poetry or things that I find inspiring in the hopes that it'll also inspire you. And I really love the format because that's something that I wouldn't really feel comfortable doing on Instagram either. I don't know. Patreon's just kind of special. I just feel like you get like a special kind of relationship with people, and so that's super fun. Anyway, so sometimes I share my process videos on Patreon Lens, and I did that yesterday, and I can show you kind of the finished images. So I was working with watercolor, which is one of the mediums that I use. And this was the first one. It's an attempt, it's a first draft. I wouldn't say it's a totally finished piece for a project that I'm working on, a story. I'm not going to tell you too much about it because it's still a secret project, but if you want to hear more about it, then you can head to Patreon. The link is probably down in my profile somewhere. And then the second one that I did, I was using ink. And that was another draft version of these kind of clouds that are under a flat surface. So these are the two options kind of that I was playing with, and we'll see what I end up doing with that. So in the meantime, oh, and then I was using this, the Cloud Collector's Handbook, as inspiration, which is super fun. It's like little pictures of different types of clouds. Some of it is more technical, but I just think it's a really cute little book. And it's just fun to think that you can, you know, learn more about the sky, which is like basically 90% of what we see on a day-to-day basis if you actually pay attention, which we most of the time don't. And I'm the first to be guilty of that, so no accusation there. Okay, I'm just gonna set this up. And if you're familiar with my process or not, you will know that I improvise a lot. So I am going to be improvising today again. Oh, awesome, Matthew. Skillshare, sweet. Oh, thanks. I'm glad that you like my minimalist art. It's fun. It's like yeah, there are a lot of fun things that you can do with simple lines and simple shapes. But it's something that I've kind of grown into more. That's awesome that you just started drawing. Like, is there a medium that you prefer, or I don't know, something in particular that you like? So this is my sketchbook. If you might have seen on my Instagram, I recently shared a flip through of my previous sketchbook. And I try to do that quite regularly. So the one that I did actually, I think I shared it yesterday on Instagram. And so you kind of see a quick flip through either on my YouTube channel, that's the longer version, or a shorter version on Instagram. And then I have an even more in-depth version on Patreon where I kind of explain like the ideas behind the different things that I was thinking about and the different projects that I was working on. And so this, I'm also going to be doing a sketchbook flip through as soon as this one's done, which is not very long. So that's fun. And just if you're curious, this is something that I did the other day. A long-legged creature of sorts. I've been having fun, actually, speaking of minimalism, Matthew, I've been having fun with even more minimalist stuff than I usually do, because I do like quite organic, complex shapes, but more recently I've really been playing around with very just simple, bold shapes. For example, I really like this one. And it might have to do with also the fact that I got all these markers. And I will show you which ones I mean. They're graphite markers. And they're cool because they're dual tips, so you have one tip that's quite thick and flat, and then you have one tip that is thin. And they're alcohol-based markers, which is something I was really unfamiliar with, and I found that they're super fun, actually. So I have a bunch of colors. These are just the black and white ones, but since they have like this flat shape, like the big, sorry, this side, the big part, it really has made me work more in very bold, simple shapes, which has been really fun. By the way, is the video moving too much? Like, is it not stable enough? If it's annoying, just let me know and I'll try to maybe re-solidify it a little. All right. So, I think I'm going to be using the brush pen today, just because it's been a while, and it's a super fun pen to use. This is not going back in the box. Screw it. And so here's the thing that I carry with me every day. It's kind of my go-to array of pens. And I have a mix of different things. I have these really cool Rittering art pens that my brother, who's also an artist, but he's more of a concept artist for video games. He does awesome stuff. He gave me these, and I love them. They're nibs, thin ones and thicker. Then I have another fountain pen that is more of a writing pen, but I use it also for drawing, which has a nice thick line. And then I have a bunch of these micron pens, which I've had for a while, and some of them I like better than others because some of them have started leaking, as you can tell with this one, probably because I drop them on the floor, which is not a good thing to do. So yeah, take care of your tools, everyone. Yeah, I try to take care of mine, and then sometimes I fail. And then, in terms of brush pens, what I have is this Faber-Castell Pitt brush pen, which is pretty fun. But my favorite, which you might be familiar with, the Pentel brush pen. And it's awesome because it's refillable. So, oh, speaking of, I think I still have a little left. And what's super fun is how thin to thick you can get. So if I can just show you here, you can do like a really thin line. And then you can go really thick. So that's kind of cool. And it's got a really nice, rich black undertone. And then this is a pen that I always have with me. It's a Geltec C4 Pilot 0.4 mica. And I really like it. It's super thin and it's really good for writing. So I use this one more for writing than I do for drawing, even though I used to use it really often for drawing. So that's it. And then I usually have a few pencils with me too. All right, so we're going to get started. And I'm going to try to angle this a little better so that you can see it. Like that. There we go. So as you know, I'm going to be improvising. And usually when I do that, I really just go by feel in terms of the kind of tool that I want to be using. That's the most important choice that I make, is the tool that I'm using, and that is really going to inform the kind of work that I do, because every single tool has a certain kind of energy, and you can either work with it or you can work against it. And I like working with it and seeing where it brings me. So I'm holding the pen in kind of a loose kind of manner, which is making a mix of these really thin lines and blobs. So that's creating a fun little texture. Cool. I'm glad you like the case and pens. Do you have like any particular pens that you've been trying out recently? So I really find that one thing that's important when improvising is to try to stay very present with what you're doing. Which I have to admit is sometimes harder when I'm doing the live drawing sessions, just because I'm doing multiple things at the same time, but I think it's actually a really interesting challenge, so I quite like it. And there have been a few times that I've had really wonderful surprises in terms of what came out during the live drawing sessions. So, you know, everything is always like an opportunity to learn something, to challenge yourself, to try something else. I can maybe even show you what I did last time. I tend to kind of gravitate towards shapes that are a little bit more organic, and that might have something to do with my background in biology. Biology was the first subject that I studied. I have a bachelor's in biology, but then I quickly realized that research was not for me. However, looking at beautiful pictures of like cells and different plants and creatures and, you know, the structure of things on a microscopic level, that was definitely for me, and I love that stuff. So and then also, like, you know, like I was saying, like the graphite markers that I've been using more recently, they've kind of pushed me to do more simple and bold things, and it's because of the way that they're built. The brush pen is really, I don't know, it's just made like organic shapes. Like the lines are just automatically very flowy and slightly chaotic, and so that definitely moves you in that direction as well. I find that often when you're dissatisfied with the drawing, it's because you're using maybe the wrong tool. So you're using a tool in a way that doesn't work with the way that the tool is built, which is why I really try to emphasize that. Though I'm actually not even sure that I spoke about that at length in my Skillshare classes, but in my private classes that I teach, or mentor sessions, because I've been doing that more recently, I do talk about that a lot. How important it is to really connect with how it feels on the paper. Because, like, if you try a dry pastel, it will have a completely different feel to it when you're using it than, for example, acrylic ink, which is much more flowing and loose. And so I find that when you really stay with that, then you actually discover, you might try like new shapes that you might not have thought of before, just because the tool itself kind of brings those out. So that's really cool to keep in mind. It's kind of making me think of, you know, like a knotted tree, like a, you know, like the structure of a tree. I don't know if you agree, but And I find actually that often with the brush pen I kind of stop breathing because when you want to do the thin lines, if you breathe too much or deeply, it makes you move and then you're controlling it a little less. So without meaning to, I sometimes stop breathing. It's important to keep on breathing though. Does this make you think of a tree? I don't know why, for me it really kind of evokes that. Yeah, you tried drawing and not breathing. After a while it gets a little uncomfortable. I hope the quality of the video is okay. What would you say? Is it good on your end? Oh, you're sweet. Thanks, Tiona. To be honest, like, I think most of us are capable of doing, I don't know, things that are similar and that to make your imagination richer and more varied. Something that I guess I don't often talk about, but one thing that I think is super important when you want to create art is to keep feeding your inspiration. So what I mean by that is like like I said earlier, I studied biology. That was my first degree. And then the second degree that I studied was English, literature, and then also film. So like the history of film, film theory, and those things, they might seem really unrelated to art, but they're actually very related because both of those fields, have a lot of visual imagery, like visual things that you can look at. And all those things are things that can inspire you. And so the shapes that kind of come out of my imagination, they don't come from nowhere. And so that's what I mean, is that the way that you can keep building your creativity and your imagination is by making sure that you're learning new things, that you're seeing new things, that you're seeing the biggest amount possible of images and photographs and structures. And I don't know, it could be anything, you know, if you're fascinated by architecture or bees, you know, like there's so many things to draw inspiration from. And if you look at enough of those things, then you'll see that subconsciously it's kind of like you've absorbed those textures, and then you can reuse them when you're drawing. So I guess that's something that kind of explains, or I don't know, hopefully that can give you an insight into where the shapes that I make come from. They come from all those moments of observing other structures, other artists, shapes, they all come together on a lower level. Oh, I don't mean lower in the sense of like bad level. I mean lower on the sense of under awareness, like more subconscious layers. And so now, as you can see, I'm really breaking the movement that I was going towards previously, just because I felt like changing it up. And we'll see where it goes. The fun thing with improvising is that you literally don't know where you're going, and so sometimes it'll work, sometimes it won't work, but it's always just a fun process. It's like discovering. It's like going on a journey, you know? And your boat is your pen. Something like that. Don't you think they look kind of like little fish? They make me think of, you know, those tiny little fish that like nibble at your feet when you're in the lake or the ocean. They also look kind of like leaves that have fallen on the ground or something. I find it pretty fascinating how just shapes and lines and colors can evoke so many different things. Just with a simple piece of paper and a pen, you can really travel. And I love it actually also when people tell me what they see in my artwork, because since I do stuff that is sometimes completely abstract or stuff that's partially abstract, well, that means that people see it in different ways. And I always find that that reveals a lot about like the creativity of the person who's looking at it. And I don't know, I just find it fascinating to see how we all have like this unique way of looking at things. And then sometimes, you know, a lot of people will see the same thing and that's fine. But it's also just fun when you have, you know, some random thing that I would have never thought of. And then somebody's like, yeah, do you see that? Like, I see a sheep on a boat. And you're like, what? And then you look at it and then they show you what they mean. And you're like, oh, yeah. I don't know. It's just cool. You kind of get a little insight into people's minds, and I find that always really enriching. getting a little dark in here, wouldn't you say? I'm just gonna open the shutters a little. I had closed them because it was too hot. I'm gonna raise it up a little. And then if it starts shining too much, I'll bring it back down. It looks like a pipe with smoke. Cool. Well, see, that's exactly what I was talking about, Tiona. See, I never would have thought of that, and it's awesome. I totally see what you mean. I love it. Fun stuff. Too much fun stuff. But also, I guess to continue the thought I was saying earlier, that, well, the other thing with abstract work is that it kind of like, a lot of people talk about it, you would say like maybe doodling or scribbling, and those words usually have kind of like a negative connotation, like something that's childish or not developed. But I find that doodling and scribbling are actually gateways to becoming more creative. Because usually when you doodle or you scribble, you're not thinking about the end result, you're not thinking about being perfect. And what that helps do is it helps you kind of connect with the creative part of yourself more. And kind of just release and get out of your comfort zone. Sorry you have connection issues, but thanks so much for tuning in, Matthew. I'll see you probably around on Instagram or wherever else, but it was really nice to have you here, and I'll see you next time. Bye! What's always hard, Tiona? The doodling and scribbling, you mean? Yeah, well, I mean, you know, that takes practice. Like, it's never, I mean, you know, literally it's you're trying to come out of your comfort zone, so it's uncomfortable, right? So it's definitely, that's, it's part of the process, and I totally know what you mean, because it's really hard. It's not always the easiest thing, but the more you try to do that, the more you kind of try to do something new and different and explore something you've never done before, then you'll see that it gets easier with time. It really does. Like, you really see the difference as time goes by if you're practicing that. And so, you know, if you feel like you have trouble doing that on a more regular basis, then you can also maybe set up a goal for yourself. Like, I'm going to do, you know, 3 drawings a week where I come out of my comfort zone, where I try totally new things and I embrace the failures, and you reframe the failures as learning opportunities. That's a huge one. That's a huge, huge, huge one. Aw, thanks, Tiona. Well, I mean, I don't remember. You did find me through Skillshare, didn't you? Well, in any case, if you haven't, then I do have those Skillshare classes where I kind of help you get out of your comfort zone and work on different exercises. And actually, I know I probably said this already last month, but I have a new Skillshare class coming out. And I know I said that last month, but I'm going to do it by the end of the month. So I have 10 days left, and I'm going to edit it, and it's a 14-day creativity challenge. And so I think that could be super helpful if you want to join in on that. And I'm also going to be offering mentor sessions. So, you know, where I chat one-on-one with people and like give you advice on how to move forward or what to work on next. And that's going to be super fun too. So yeah, soon. It's almost like a porcupine texture. What do you say? Yeah, that would be great. I don't remember if you follow me on Instagram, but I'll definitely be announcing it on there and on Patreon and on Facebook. So, or even if you follow me on Skillshare. I think it's going to be super fun. Thing is, to be totally honest, I just keep procrastinating with the editing process because editing takes so much time, and once I start, I know that I'm going to be spending like the next week or 10 days doing just that. And so that's why I keep delaying it. And also because I've had a lot of other stuff. Awesome, sweet. Yeah, then you'll definitely hear about the class as soon as it's ready. But I kind of promised Skillshare that I would be publishing it by the end of June. So that's soon. 10 days left. Or 9. Hi, whoever just joined. Or maybe it's been a while and I just didn't notice that you were there. Welcome, welcome. My name is Marie-Noëlle Worm, if you don't know me yet. And I am improvising, which is something that I usually do for most of my drawings. Not all of them, but a lot of them. Because improvising brings you to places you wouldn't necessarily have gone to if you were trying to plan. I think the reason for that is because it's just because, I don't know, when you plan, you're more in an intellectual frame of mind, like, or analytical frame of mind, whereas when you're improvising, you're working on an intuitive level. And so I think that is why improvising can really push you out of your comfort zone, because you're kind of forcing yourself to let go of that analytical part of your mind and just go with the flow. And so it can be quite terrifying at times. No doubt about that, as you know, Tiona. No worries, like, seriously, no pressure. It's really sweet that you come on the live drawing sessions when I make them, and you know, Patreon isn't for everybody, though it is pretty awesome. What I like about Patreon is that people can really participate according to what their budget is and what they feel comfortable with. So I support a few people also on Patreon. People who create videos and artists, a few musicians. I just think it's a super fun platform. And I like the idea of kind of creating a new system where you can support creators in the work that they already do, which enables them to be more free and create things that resonate with them. And so since it resonates more with them, then often it's also more powerful, more interesting, more vulnerable. Those are just some of the things that I like about Patreon. What do you work in, actually? I'm curious. Or are you studying right now, or Tiona? I mean, there are other people here. But say hi if you feel comfortable, and if you don't, that's fine too. I don't know if you can see, but this looks kind of like a river or a path, kind of, that's leading up to this tree. That's kind of the feeling that I'm getting. Ooh, an archaeologist. That's awesome. Whoa. I don't think I've ever met an archaeologist before. That's super cool. So what is it that do you specialize in a certain thing, or you're working on an excavation? Man, that's so cool. I think the reason I think it's so cool too is when I was younger, I wanted to be an archaeologist because I was fascinated by Egypt and the ancient Egyptian pyramids and the pharaohs and all that. So so it's cool. What's your excavation like of? Is it like dinosaur bones or a building or? Antique period of Georgia. Wow, that must be fascinating. I'm sure that Georgia has so much ancient history. Like, yeah, that must be quite inspiring. I can imagine. And so I'm curious, like, what do you do on a daily basis when you're an archaeologist? Are you working on, like, just excavating all day, or um, are you in a lab sometimes, or in an office? Like, I'm just curious what that's like. Digging. Yeah, nice. Awesome. So outside work. That's fun. Middle Ages site. That's super cool. It almost looks like cobblestones, I find. You know, like the shade of cobblestones. Doesn't it? Writing diary. Oh, so you need to like track, I guess, like log what it is that you found? Whoa. Yeah, so that must be pretty time consuming, I'm guessing. Like I'm guessing you need to like write down the time and the date and what it is that you found and who with. And painting, washing ceramics. Wow. That's so fascinating. There's so many cool jobs out there. Right? All right. So I think I'm kind of done with this path, river, cobblestone, smoke, whatever it is that you want to envision. And I'm going to see what, actually I might add a little bit more. See, I think these ones I added kind of broke the flow. So I'm just going to transform the flow to something a little bit more deliberate. Yeah, I'm sure you can say different things every time you turn it around too. I could add, I'm kind of thinking of adding like a little creature, a little guy somewhere around here. Maybe. What do you think? Like a tiny little deer or fox or something. All right. So you see the kind of the space that I added in here? It's kind of also a way so that as a viewer you can kind of just imagine that that texture continues. But rather than seeing it on the page with me doing it, then you can kind of just build it in your mind that it continues to the front here. That's kind of the idea. All right. Let's make a little creature. The thing that I'm afraid of is since it's going to be pretty small, I need to be very clear on the shape of it so that it's quite clear what it is that I'm doing. So I'm first going to try with some pencil just to try a few different variations maybe. Because if I make it tiny and the light is a little annoying here. There we go. If I make it turn, kind of want to make one of these long-legged creatures like I've been doing recently. But if I do that, risk is that it's going to look quite muddled. So I'm not really happy with that, so I'm going to try something else. Oh no! My rubber... See, so this is the unexpected. Let's see what we do with this. Do you see how the eraser that I used made a big black blob? I don't know if you can see it. But it also... Wow, it's still doing it. So it's like the brush, oh, wow. Look, it's doing it even more. Okay, so this is going to be interesting because now you get to see what happens when I screw up. So, it made tons of different lines. Yeah, it's like as though the brush pen wasn't dry. So what I'm going to do instead is I'm going to try to work with it. So I'm going to try to spread it even more. And so that's one way of working when something doesn't go the way that you were planning. Rather than resist it, work with it. All right, and this is going to bring me to a totally different space. I still want to create my creature though. Maybe I can just make him bigger and kind of looking down. Can you actually see that in the video? I should work it out, you're right. Yep, that's what I'm trying to do. So, all right. So I think I have the shape of that one down. And I'm maybe going to work with a thinner pen. And then I'm going to go back to the little stains and stuff that I made in that corner. This is a 0.01 micron pen. Oops. That's all right. All right. So, these lines are thicker than I planned them to be, but that's all right. And I'm going to just elongate these a little bit. And I think he'll have a black body and either a colorful or a white head, something like that. Alright, we're starting to get somewhere. Should he have some ears? What do you think? Let me show you what I'm thinking in terms of ears. Maybe no ears is fun too. And so I might, since there's a bit of a shadow, might add a bit of a shadow, or I could go without. So I don't know if you can see, but my fingers are filthy. And I put tons of fingerprints everywhere. I am not the cleanest artist. Like some artists, you see them like work and their drawings are always like print free and they have nothing on them. And I kind of admire that. So I'm going to actually be using the eraser, which was making the ink spread earlier without me meaning to. I'm going to use it deliberately to make the ink spread. But I'm just going to try to clean up the rest of it too. Sorry if the video is moving. So, I kind of like this upwards movement. So I'm going to try to exaggerate that. And so, you know what? This is actually kind of giving me an idea. I might go back to using actual pencil. This is a dry pencil, but I'm going to go for something a little darker. Oh, your hands are, yeah, are always black. Thanks. That makes me feel less lonely because sometimes I'm like, how do I make myself so dirty when I'm only using like a pen and, you know, but it's just the way it is. So I'm going to go for something a little bit harder, but not too hard. Maybe actually just an HB, if I can find it. Or an H. And so I'm going to use those shapes that just got created with the ink getting all messed up. And then I'm going to pull them, continue them with this pencil. I'm even going to add some over here. Kind of as though they're tall grasses or something like that. And then I can add some more even on this side. But it's cool also because see these, you see, so this is why I love, why I love making mistakes, because you find things out that you wouldn't normally. So that mistake pushed me to creating these lines with the pencil. And now I'm realizing I actually really like that. Why? Because it kind of, these vertical lines are kind of contrasting with these organic movements that I had over here. So it's just super cool. Use the mistakes. Use them as an excuse. And I'm maybe even going to go slightly darker. Really kind of bring out the shape here of this little guy.
Thanks. I'm glad you like them. I might actually add some pen in there. I don't know, I'm still hesitating, though I kind of like the texture of the pencil mixed in with the black ink. So kind of, I don't know if you see what I'm doing here, but I'm adding all these lines also, and it's kind of like building a pathway for your eye. I mean, already you had this sort of river here, which is kind of draws you into here, but then I'm kind of exaggerating that with these vertical lines so that it kind of draws your eye in to this little creature. Waterfall like, cool. Yeah, exactly. Okay. I think I'm getting actually close to the end. Though I might... There's something maybe that I want to keep working on right over here in this top section. I don't know. At the same time, I quite like the simplicity of this shape. What do you think? I'm curious. I'm curious to know. Maybe I could add a little bit of black here. I think I'm going to switch back a little bit to this. Yeah, keep it like that? Okay, awesome. Yeah, because I think it's kind of a cool shape. It's kind of almost like a tree stump or something like that. But I'm just going to come in and add a few more of these tiny little things here. Maybe, I know, shade this little guy. It's going to be black. I'm going to try to make sure I can't see very well right here. Alright, I should have done it with this pen, but that's alright. Just want to make sure that that all works. There we go. There we go, that's a little better. It's like you're drinking water near the tree. Yeah, that's exactly what it is. Awesome, I love it. I'm gonna add a little bit of the black pen on like these vertical lines. I'm gonna turn some of them into actual black lines. Why? Because since this is my focal point, I kind of want to bring that out even more by adding a few of these black lines, because as you can tell, see, things are very highly contrasted here and then less so here. So I just kind of want to bring that out. I think that'll be a nice little addition. light's kind of annoying. I don't know if you can see well. A few even over here. So I'm getting up here just to get a little bit of distance and look at it from a little bit of a distance. I might add in a few more of these tiny little things. Am I going to? Yeah, I'm going to post it on Insta soon, I think. Yeah, totally. So then you can get a much closer view of it. I might try to do it today if the light is okay. Sometimes in the afternoon the light isn't the best. But I'm going to just add in a few little things here just to make it a little blacker. So it's kind of cool. I've noticed, so between this one and the previous one that I made, there's kind of a theme to my live drawing sessions. They're often slightly organic and they include creatures. And I think that this one is done. Yep, it is done. Thanks so much for tuning in. Let me show you the previous one that I made on my live drawing session, which you might have seen already. I can find it. Oh, sorry, it's like wiggling. Ah, this one. Remember that one? So, that's the one that I did last time. And it's a deer with like abstract forms and shapes. And I don't think there was another one since then, right? That was the last one. Tiona, you're the one who maybe remembers, but I feel like that was the last live drawing session I made. Yeah. And then, so look, like this one and this one, there's a definite theme there. And it's cool. So thanks for allowing me, well, for helping me figure out this new series, I guess. Let me disconnect this from the stand and switch this around. So I hope you enjoyed that. I'm going to maybe show you like a little close-up of the drawing. Would you like to do that? Yeah, let's do that. All right. Here's a little close-up of the little guy, the little creature, and the tree stump, and the waterfall-like stuff. And thanks so much for checking in. It was super fun, and I actually can't wait till next month so that I can figure out one more of these little creatures to add to the series. So in the meantime, you can find me, like I said, on Instagram, on Patreon, on Facebook. I'm also on Twitter and Tumblr, but I don't really use them that often. It's more that they're in sync with my other social media platforms, so they kind of, you know, connect to that. What else? Is there anything else I needed to say? Yeah, skill class soon, end of the month. I'm going to be doing it, I'm going to be editing it, and I'm going to be releasing it. So I hope to see you there. And you can just like search for my name on Skillshare if you haven't done so already. And I'll see you next time. Thanks, Tiona, for checking in, and the other two, I don't know who you are, but hello, and I'm glad that you were here. I'll see you around. Bye.